Hello again. So we're going ahead and we're starting on page 157 where we left off. And today we're going to start with point 14 on 157 of the record of the orally transmitted teachings by Nichiren Daishonin, translated by Burton Watson. Point 14 on the words, after they had finished paying for their offenses, they once more encountered the Bodhisattva never disparaging, who instructed them in Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, supreme perfect enlightenment. And again, he's speaking of the people that slandered him, that ended up falling into hell for committing that slander. And after 1,000 kalpas, they were supposed to be able to come back and encounter him again and attain Buddhahood in their present form. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says on page 157, the record of the orally transmitted teaching says, though people may regret their error in slandering the Lotus Sutra and take faith in and give allegiance to the teachings. And listen to this very carefully, some of you, because I know there are people there that are interested and curious and maybe chant occasionally, but this is really encouraging you to be very serious about this point of attaining Buddhahood in your present form, which is the whole reason we start chanting. It's the whole reason we encounter Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in the first place. So it says, if their faith is shallow, okay, so if you take this casually, then they will have to fall into the hell of incessant suffering. And I don't want that for anyone. So I hope you're listening to what I'm saying, because I'm not saying it myself. I'm reading to you what the Daishonin's teaching is. Let me start again. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, though people may regret their error in slandering the Lotus Sutra by not being diligent, no dutta, if their faith is shallow, they will still have to fall into the hell of incessant suffering. This is due to the vehemence with which they earlier committed slander, because even if you're now have a more shallow faith, it probably began with slander. Okay, so you're working your way out of a detriment, and you don't want to recommit those same errors. You want to stop them in a single lifetime, attain Buddhahood in your present form, and then you don't have to worry about this anymore. It'll always happen every lifetime. But if they but again, there's always this redemption of that after they have been plunged into the hell of incessant suffering for 1,000 kalpas, and the time has come for their release, then they will meet Nichiren again. They will meet the Gohonzon again. They will meet Nam-myoho Renge-kyo again. It's not about meeting Nichiren personally. Meeting Nichiren means meeting the Gohonzon and chanting Daimoku with faith. Sincere faith. They will meet Nichiren once again. As the sutra says, they once more will encounter Nichiren. Okay, so they once more will encounter the Buddha, the Bodhisattva never disparaging, because again, the Daishonin correlates his life and life activities with those of this this character from the Lotus Sutra, referred to as the Bodhisattva never disparaging, but who is also described as ultimately attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi and teaching others to do the same. Supreme perfect enlightenment. Point 15 at the very bottom of page 157. Point 15, concerning the passage, gainer of great authority, you should understand, and that's who this chapter is actually addressed to. Gainer of great authority, you should understand that this sutra richly benefits the bodhisattvas and mahasattvas, for it can cause them to attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, for it can cause them to attain supreme perfect enlightenment. For this reason, after the thus come one is passed into extinction, the bodhisattvas and mahasattvas should at all times accept, uphold, read, recite, explain, preach, and transcribe this sutra. That's how you show the diligence to attain Buddhahood in your present form. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says that practices carried out by the Bodhisattva never disparaging are such as are described here. And as we may see, after the Buddha has passed into extinction, one should carry out the 5 types of practice related to the Lotus Sutra, namely accepting and upholding it, reading it, reciting it, explaining and preaching it, and transcribing it. So there's a comma a couple times there. There are really just 5 types of practice: accepting and upholding, reading, reciting, explaining and preaching, and transcribing. Okay? Continuing in the middle of page 158. Properly speaking, the 25 characters beginning with the words "for this reason" in the above thing that I just read, where it says he's going for it can cause them to attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. For this reason, after the thus come one has passed into extinction, the Bodhisattvas and Mahasattvas said at all times, accept, uphold, read, recite, explain, preach, and transcribe this sutra. So he's saying, properly speaking, the 25 characters beginning with the words "for this reason" apply to Nichiren. Properly speaking, it applies to Nichiren. For this reason, properly speaking, the 25 characters beginning with the words "for this reason" apply to Nichiren and his followers in the latter day of the law. So all of us are of the same mind as Nichiren. That's what he's saying, he is followers. Okay. Therefore, the text makes a point of saying "for this reason," and goes on to explain that what follows applies to after the thus come one has passed into extinction. Okay, in the last 500-year period and beyond, in Mappo, in the latter day. He's saying this all applies to the latter day specifically. This is done because this is one of the chapters that pertain to the transmission of the sutra. As a rule, and transmission, you've got introduction, revelation, and transmission are the 3 phases. Okay, so as a rule, the passages on the transmission of the sutra are meant for people of the present and the future. In a sense, the entire Lotus Sutra was preached for the sake of people who lived when the Buddha was in the world, as a rule, in a sense. But in a strict sense, it was meant for the people of the present time, the latter day of the law. Therefore, the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo have been approved jointly by all the Buddhas of the 3 existences as something that is meant for the people living in a future time, after the thus come one has passed into extinction. So not in the middle day, not in the former day of the law, not in the middle day of the law. It's for the latter day, when hidden in the depths of the lotus of the 16th chapter, of the lifespan chapter, Nichiren's able to perceive and understand the original state of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and bring it forth as a teaching that makes it easy for anybody. All you got to do is practice and chant the Daimoku to the Gohonzon with sincere faith. You can attain Buddhahood in your present form. For reals, not BS. It can really happen. All the doctrines set forth in the various different chapters of the sutra, as you would read if you read the whole sutra, are functions or applications of the Daimoku. Their functions or applications of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the title of the sutra. Okay, in other words, this whole thing is preparatory for the latter day of the law. The Lotus Sutra is a preparation for the latter day of the law, and the disciples of Shakyamuni attain their Buddhahood and their awakening in the former and the middle day. And the latter day, it's lost its power to be able to give, to allow you to receive that. Okay, so that you need to chant, since it's now the latter day of the law. All of the doctrines set forth in the various different chapters of the sutra are functions or applications of the Daimoku, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, or title of the sutra. For if the Daimoku of the wonderful law, that is the entity, okay, is meant to be applied in the latter day of the law, and the Daimoku of the wonderful law, that is the entity, is our life as practitioners being of one mind with Nichiren, who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We are that entity when we actually manifest that life condition through that behavior. Then how could the same not apply to the various individual chapters? So he's saying, that's why he said all the chapters are really about getting you ready to achieve enlightenment in your present form through finding Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and becoming one mind with the original teacher Nichiren. But this doctrine is to be kept secret because, again, it's based on the teaching that's hidden in the depths of the Lotus Sutra, not on the surface of the Lotus Sutra. The great teacher Tentai at the top of page 159 now explains this idea by saying when one pulls on the main cord of a net, there are no meshes that do not move, from volume 1 of Profound Meaning. And the great teacher Myolo says, when for the sake of brevity one mentions only the daimoku or title, Myoho Rengekyo, Nam-myoho Rengekyo in the latter day, the entire sutra is by implication included therein, from volume 8 of Annotations on the Words and Phrases of the Lotus Sutra. Those who do not understand this are not qualified to propagate the sutra in the latter day of the law. You're not qualified to propagate the Lotus Sutra 28 chapter. The Great Collection of Sutras already said that it's a provisional sutra after the first 2,000 years after Shakyamuni's death. So he's saying, if you don't understand this point about the Daimoku, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, being the supreme teaching in the 5th 500-year period and beyond, you're not qualified to talk about what's in the 28th chapter of Lotus Sutra. That's what that just said. Because you're just going to confuse people and lead them onto a path that goes nowhere, because this is a provisional teaching now. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and Nichiren's teaching is the appropriate teaching for the 5th 500-year period and beyond, the latter day which we live in now. Okay, so continuing on page 159, point 16, concerning the true entity exemplified by Bodhisattva never disparaging, as he is depicted here in this chapter. That would be the original teacher Nichiren and all of us that are of the same mind as him, because we all become equal to him by utilizing his teaching of faith to transform our 9 world bodies into the eternally endowed 3 bodies. Okay? We become Buddhas in our present form. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the Bodhisattva never disparaging represents the living beings of the 10 worlds. So that's what he was just talking about. Those of us that are of faith and of the same mind as Nichiren, and everybody has that potential. So it represents the living beings of the 10 worlds. Constantly throughout the 3 existences, he carries out his practice of bowing in obeisance. So he's saying, throughout the 3 existences, so this process isn't related to the character never disparaging in the Lotus Sutra. This is the function of the Bodhisattva, the Buddha actually, sharing his wisdom and opening the door and allowing others to gain the wisdom of the Buddha. It's your reward body taking you to the place where you discover your Dharma body. Okay, the Bodhisattva never disparaging represents the living beings of the 10 worlds. Constantly throughout the 3 existences, he carries out the practice of bowing and obeisance. And the words that issue from his mouth are the sounds of the wonderful law, are the sounds of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Even when the wardens of hell take up their clubs and berate offenders, the offenders submit to the berating, and so their true entity is a kind of bow of obeisance. They would not dare to respond out of mere disparagement. So if the wardens are just disparaging them, they would not commit greater slander, continuing slander. If the offenders suppose that the wardens are punishing them unjustly, like they didn't do anything to deserve that, then in turn they are unjustly berating the Bodhisattva never disparaging. This is what is meant by the practice of Shakabuku. We actually, again, tell the truth about the fact that the latter day is the time of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, even if it makes other people unhappy to hear that. We try to plant the seed of the Daimoku in their lives so they too can follow the path to the 6th stage of practice and attain Buddhahood in their present form. Point 17, continuing at the bottom of page 159, concerning the various positions or standpoints. Point 17, concerning the various positions or standpoints from which the Bodhisattva never disparaging's bow of obeisance is carried out. There are 14 such positions from which the bow of obeisance is conducted, and we're going to go through them now. This is how we finish the never disparaging chapters, by reviewing these 14 positions of bows of obeisance. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, Nichiren says, the first position is that represented by the bow of obeisance carried out in the treasure tower, the 11th chapter. This is between Shakyamuni and many treasures. This is because the stupa or tower is composed of the 5 elements. And as we know from the Gosho letter to Abutsabo, the 5 elements are earth. The 5 elements are earth, water, our bodies. Everything in the phenomenal realm is made up of these 5 components. The 5 elements are earth, water, I skipped a page here, sorry. Earth, water, fire, wind, and space. Okay, he says that's why the real Gohonzon is our actual life, he says. The stupa made up of these is known as the treasure tower. So the stupa made up of these 5 elements is known as the treasure tower. In reality, is our lives as practitioners of the law in the latter day. Vast as the Dharma realm is, it is composed of nothing more than these 5 elements. The entire Dharma realm is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Therefore, it has been taught that the bow of obeisance is carried out within the treasure tower. Treat this as secret. Treat this as secret, again, because it's a teaching from Nichiren, and you won't find it on the surface of the Lotus Sutra. Point 18. And I looked all this stuff up a long time ago, so luckily I have in the margins here the exact position, the exact page numbers from the Lotus Sutra that this comes from. Point 18. Concerning the bow of obeisance based on the passage on opening, showing, awakening, and causing to enter. Chapter 2, Expedient Means. It's on page 63. And it says, the Buddhas, the world-honored ones, wish to open the door of the Buddha wisdom to all living beings to allow them to attain purity. This is why they appear in the world. They wish to show the Buddha wisdom to living beings, and therefore they appear in the world. They wish to cause living beings to awaken to the Buddha wisdom, and therefore they appear in the world. They wish to induce living beings to enter the path of Buddha wisdom, and thereby they reappear in the world. Shariputra, this is the one great reason for which the Buddhas appear in the world. So if you've attained Buddhahood in your present form, as I have, the reason that we've actually manifested this in this world, gone through all the trials, tribulations, difficulties, benefits, great reward, whatever it took for us to finally get to the point that we decided we wanted to attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhaya. We got serious about seeking that out in the teaching, not just chanting for things, okay? When we bring forth that 6th stage of practice, we validate that this paragraph is talking, this thing that I just read from the Lotus Sutra is talking about us, the eternal state of us. Each one of us has our own karma. We're all eternally manifested entities, okay? Originally, eternally endowed with the 3 bodies. There's not another entity like the one that's called Tom right now that's speaking to you, okay? We're all different. We all have different functions. So he says, page 64, okay? Again, point 18, concerning the bow of obeisance based on the passage on the opening, showing, awakening, and causing to enter. I just read it to you. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, another place where the bow of obeisance is conducted is the passage that tells how the Buddhas wish for the sake of all living beings to carry out 4 actions. I just read them to you, namely, to open, show, awaken, and cause them to enter. That's what I'm trying to do to anybody that's reading this or listening to this that is not in the same place that I am. This passage in the Expedient Means chapter, and that doesn't make me different or better than you, by the way. It makes us exactly the same. It's just that I'm awakened and perhaps you aren't yet. Those of you that are, again, you know you are awakened as well. You understand exactly what I'm talking about. This passage in the Expedient Means chapter, therefore, represents the second place where the bow of obeisance is carried out. In the Words and Phrases, Volume 10, Tentai interprets this to mean that within one's heart, one possesses the understanding of the Bodhisattva, never disparaging, the understanding that all people are equal to you. All people can attain Buddhahood, just as you have. It's your obligation to try and help them to do so. He interprets this understanding to mean the understanding that all living beings possess innate Buddhahood, as I know all of you do. To open up the Buddha nature is that is innate to them, in them, The Buddhas appear in the world. The teachers of the law appear in the world. This is what the sutra means when it says to open the door of Buddha wisdom to all living beings. Chapter 2, expedient means, as I just read to you. Point 19, Point 19, concerning the vow of obeisance related to the passage, at all times I think to myself, how can I cause living beings to gain entry into the unsurpassed way and quickly acquire the body of a Buddha? Chapter 16, that would be right here. And at the very last lines, it says, I preach various doctrines for them on page 273. Right, page 273. I preach various doctrines for them. At all times I think to myself, how can I cause living beings to gain entry into the unsurpassed way and quickly acquire the body of a Buddha? They're the last words in the sutra pertaining to the chapter 16. All right, and then the record of continuing. The record of the orally transmitted teachings at the bottom of page 160, the words at all times refer to the three existences. So that means that lifetime after lifetime, time from Kuan Ganzhou, time without beginning, a beginningless time, on into the future, which is also infinite. We function in this manner because we're Buddhists. That's the reason we come back into the Saha world. We choose to do this. That's why we're, again, Buddhas of limitless joy. We freely give ourselves to the task of trying to convince others to follow the same process that we have. Okay? The words at all times refers to the three existences. So not something that's temporary or just now or any other time. It's at all times. The word think indicates that the Buddha thinks of the Buddha nature inherent in all living beings, confident that anybody and everybody can become equal to the Buddha himself. Consequently, the idea expressed in the words quickly acquire the body of a Buddha is the same as expressed in the words of the Bodhisattva, never disparaging, you are all certain to attain Buddhahood. Because that's that certainty. You have the Buddha nature. You will attain Buddhahood. I've just opened the door for you. Hence, this passage has been taken to represent the Bodhisattva never disparaging's vow of obeisance. The great teacher Tentai interprets it in his Words and Phrases on volume 10 as the replacement of the three vehicles with the one vehicle, which we know is cause awake, or voice hears, cause awakens ones, and bodhisattva, are actually all just phases of Buddhahood. Okay, they're just incremental aspects of Buddhahood, attaining Buddhahood in your present form. You have to go through being a voice hearer to have the cause awaken one, the things that are actually manifestations of your own reward body, your own mind, before you can perceive the Dharma realm exactly as it is, which is the state of Buddhahood. The great teacher Tentai interprets it in the Words and Phrases, volume 10, as the replacement of the three vehicles with the one vehicle, and as the opening of the near and revealing the distant. Treat this matter as secret. Treat this matter as secret. Okay? He's saying again, don't start talking about this unless you really understand it. It's for those that are interested to actually know the truth and are ready to study to become Buddhas in their present form. Point 20, concerning the vow of obeisance related to the words, originally I practiced the Bodhisattva way. Chapter 16, lifespan, that's on page 268, and I lost my point, so I won't read it to you, but it's there, I promise you, if you go to page 268 of the translation of the Lotus Sutra by Burton Watson, Soka Gakkai. Thank you, President Ikeda. It's right there. The record of the early transmitted teaching says the word I here in the sutra refers to Shakyamuni Buddha when he was carrying out the true cause of his original enlightenment. This passage concerning how the Buddha originally practiced the Bodhisattva way refers to the practice of the Bodhisattva never disparaging, because Shakyamuni qualifies after he tells this whole tale about Bodhisattva never disparaging, and everything he went through to try and convince people, he says, do you not know who this was? This was me. So actually, Bodhisattva Never Disparaging is qualified in the Lotus Sutra as being a past lifetime identity of Shakyamuni. Hence, it indicates a place where the vow of obeisance is carried out. Point 21, bottom of page 161. This is from page 307. This is from the Supernatural Powers chapter, I believe. No, it's from the Never Disparaging chapter. It says, point 21, concerning the vow of obeisance related to the words birth, aging, sickness, and death, from page 307. And it says here, the Buddha Awesome Sound King at the bottom of page 207, during the age when he preached the law for heavenly and human beings and asuras. For those who were seeking to become voice hearers, he responded by preaching the doctrine of the Four Noble Truths so they could transcend birth, aging, sickness, and death, and eventually attain nirvana. So the first of the Four Noble realms is voice hearers, right? For those seeking to become Pratyeka Buddhas, he responded by preaching the doctrine of the 12-link chain of causation. For the Bodhisattvas, as a means to lead them to the supreme perfect enlightenment, he responded by preaching the doctrine of the 6 paramitas, so they could eventually gain the Buddha way. Okay. The record of the early transmitted teaching says, living beings as a whole fail to free themselves from the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, but continue to wander deluded in impermanence, change, and extinction. They don't pursue attaining Buddhahood in their present form. They're casual about their faith. They may know it, they may not slander it. Good. They're progressing along the path. But the whole idea is to attain Buddhahood in your present form so that you can be a teacher of the law. All right? But continue to wander deluded in impermanence, change, and extinction. Therefore, they fail to realize that they are capable of achieving enlightenment in a future existence. But when they come to realize this fact, that they can attain Buddhahood in their present form and in the future, then they will understand the doctrine that earthly desires are enlightenment and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. Whatever you go through till you get to the 6th stage of practice is all for the purpose of you getting to the 6th stage of practice and revealing your true identity and the eternally endowed 3 bodies of which you've always been endowed. But when they come to realize this fact, then they will understand the doctrine that earthly desires enlightenment and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. And when they do so, the person who has taught them has performed a vow of obeisance to them. Okay, and you're supposed to have your hands together, gasho. All right, that's a vow of obeisance, not just bowing at the waist. Gasho. When left and right hands of the bower are held apart, this symbolizes the fact that earthly desires and enlightenment and the sufferings of birth and death and nirvana and the 4 kinds of believers of overbearing arrogance and the Bodhisattva Never Disparaging are all quite separate entities. Okay? All quite separate entities, because some of them are slandering and some of them, and Bodhisattva Never Disparaging certainly is not. But when the 2 hands are brought together in a vow of obeisance, this symbolizes the fact that earthly desires are enlightenment and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. That's a perspective of Buddhists. Then a vow of obeisance is performed to the fact that the Buddha nature inherent in the 4 kinds of believers of overbearing arrogance and the Buddha nature inherent in the Bodhisattva Never Disparaging are both manifestations of the single wonderful law. Point 22, concerning the vow of obeisance relating to the Dharma nature. The record, and it's on page 308. And that is, I have profound reverence for you. I would never dare treat you with disparagement or arrogance. Why? Because you will all practice the Bodhisattva way and will then be able to attain Buddhahood. So he predicts all of the people that are throwing sticks and staves at him and rocks and pelting him are all going to attain Buddhahood someday. The Bodhisattva, never disparaging, plants his feet firmly on the three inherent potentials of the Buddha nature that represent the Dharma nature and the true aspect of reality, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the heart of the 24 characters that make up the passage reading. I have profound reverence for you. I would never dare treat you with disparagement or arrogance. Why? Because you are all practicing the Bodhisattva way and are certain to attain Buddhahood. Now, they're not practicing the Bodhisattva way, but because he has expressed to them, namely Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the heart of this 24 character part of the story of never disparaging, of the Lotus Sutra, chapter 20. Okay, that's why he can say, why? Because you're all practicing the Bodhisattva way, because you've all now heard the name and the words of the truth. That's all I had to do to get you on your way. Okay, and you're certain to attain Buddhahood, chapter 20. I just read it to you. And then he bows to the four kinds of believers who in their ignorance are overbearingly arrogant, thinking they know what they don't know. And in doing so, he is performing a bow of obeisance to the Buddha nature, dormant and undeveloped in living beings. And with that, we'll stop right there and we'll continue on point 23 the next time we get together. Thank you very much.